Travel companies and SACCOS are stranded 3 days after President Kenyatta lifted a ban on inter-county travel into and out of the 3 counties, including Nairobi. The matatu operators say they are yet to gain clarity of mandatory certification that would allow them to ferry passengers to the countryside. But as Sam Gituku reports, the certification comes with more responsibilities for matatu managers and operators, as they are key gatekeepers against the coronavirus, with passengers also required to declare their residential address for contact tracing.
They've been raring to hit the road for days now, but a clause in President Kenyatta's address to the nation as he reopened the economy has been jerking the acceleration.
To operate public service vehicles, the operators will require mandatory certification from the Ministry of Health in consultation with the Ministry of Transport.
When Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia addressed the nation on the mandatory certification, the promise was they would be available by Thursday.
That document is being prepared today to make sure that from tomorrow we can have operators having that document going into our vehicles. And then when they get into the counties, the accountability, responsibility becomes that of the public health officers in the counties.
Sources at the National Transport and Safety Authority indicating that might become a reality starting Friday. But on the ground, confusion reigns. The appetite to ferry willing customers overpowering some upcountry service operators, subjecting themselves to the initial COVID-19 measures that are also being applied in the rest of the country.
We have started our operation since yesterday, but we have been looking, because initially we had been given guidance and protocols of how we should operate before the lockdown. And so we said with those guidance protocols, before we are given the others by the minister or the PS from both ministries, like I've mentioned, we started the operation.
But there are those still cautious, keen on following the procedures.
Huwezi kuwa na imani ya kwenda juu hatujui ni nini inahitajika. Kienda kupimwa nasemekana hiyo sio barua inatakikana. Sasa hata tunasito ni vipi? Hii barua itapatikana wapi? Ni kwa NTSA ama ni kwa Herald?
Kwa upande wetu kila jambo tunaona ni kama tumetimiza. Kile ambacho tunangoja tu ni kile cheti kutoka kwa Wizara ya Uchukuzi kupitia kwa NTSA. Wakati wowote wakituambia cheti ndio hichi, tunaanza.
According to the road transport protocols released by the Ministry of Transport, PSV operators must have thermal screening gadgets and administer them on all staff members and travelers. They must have hand-washing facilities or hand sanitizers, with all persons accessing offices or vehicles required to put on masks. Matatu owners must stock appropriate PPEs for their crew, with crew and passengers whose body temperature reads more than 37.5 degrees required to be isolated and denied travel. Matatu businesses must disinfect their offices and vehicles regularly while providing appropriate waste disposal bins for used masks. For long-distance PSVs, their responsibility is higher. To aid contact tracing in case of a COVID-19 case in line of duty, they must maintain passenger manifests for at least 1 month. They must capture data of passengers, including names, nationality, ID numbers, telephone numbers, allocated seat, and residential address of the passengers. This information is to be presented to public health officials if required. Drivers and conductors must sensitize passengers on safety measures against COVID-19 all the time before departure. The PSV protocols now require 14-seater matatus to carry not more than 10 people, including the driver and conductor. 33-seaters will only carry 18 people, while 51-seaters are limited to 30 occupants. Tuk-tuk vehicles will only ferry 1 passenger at a time, just like motorbikes. And as the country gears towards resuming domestic flights Wednesday next week and international flights on August 1st, some rules come with the reopening. Aircrafts larger than 100 passengers will now be required to reserve the last 3 rows of the aircrafts for isolation of passengers showing COVID-19 symptoms. For smaller aircrafts, passengers sitting next to a suspected case will have to be moved. The lavatory nearest to such a passenger must be designated for quarantined travelers. The receiving airport will have to be informed in advance to expect such a passenger, who must disembark long after everyone else has left the plane. Such an aircraft must be cleaned and disinfected with all passenger data available to public health officials in case of contact tracing. Sam Gituku, Citizen TV, Nairobi.